G'day, Omar Beatty, Principal of Realty Estate Agents. Today's quick tip is for those purchasers out there who are looking to purchase a property and don't know how to go about securing a property and what are the ways to exchange contracts. Pretty much there are three ways. You have exchange under option conditions, there's an exchange with a 66W no cooling off period, there's an exchange with a cooling off period. We'll start with the cooling off period. If you were to make an offer on a property and that offer was verbally accepted, the agent may ask you to come into their office, sign a contract, leave 0.25% deposit, so 0.25 times the purchase price generally adds up anywhere between $1,000 to $2,500 depending on the price of the home. Leave that, the owner accepts your offer, the owner signs their end of the contract, the agent then exchanges contracts, which means that the vendor signed contract is sent over to your solicitor or conveyancer, your signed contract, being the purchaser's contract, is sent over to the vendor's solicitor or conveyancer. Now during that cooling off period, which generally lasts between 5 and 10 days, what will happen is your solicitor will liaise with the vendor's solicitor. They'll make any adjustments or changes to the contracts that are needed or necessary. Your solicitor will also organise a building and pest inspection, a strata report if needed, and ensure that your loan approval is ready to go. So it's unconditionally approved and your lender's going to supply the money if it's going to be a deal where you're borrowing money from a bank. Make sure that your actual loan is approved and ready to go. So if that's all done at the end of the cooling off period, you need to come in, pay your 10% deposit or 5%, whatever's negotiated at the time, minus the 0.25% you've already paid. That gives you the balance. The balance is then paid to the agent or the solicitor, depending on where the money's going to be held. The money's put in the trust account. At the end of settlement, that money's then released to the owner, the property's settled and the keys are handed to you. Now, the positives about exchanging with the cooling off period are you've actually committed the vendor to sell to you at a particular price during that time. So the vendor can't actually change their mind, pull out of the sale, or can't turn around and sell it to somebody else at a higher price while it's in that cooling off period. So you've essentially secured the property for that moment in time, or the 5 or 10 days. Now, if you do change your mind for whatever reason during the 5 to 10 day cooling off period, you will forfeit 0.25% to the vendor. Now that becomes compensation to the vendor for the pure fact that they've taken the property off the market for you and they've possibly said no to higher offers. Well, they haven't said no to higher offers, they've possibly been put in a situation where they can't accept any higher offers and the property was secured for you. Now, that's a current law under New South Wales legislation with property, that if you do pay 0.25% and use a standard exchange contract subject to a cooling off period, unless there are predetermined clauses inserted into the contract, then generally speaking you'll lose that 0.25% to the vendor. It may seem like you're losing a lot of money, but peace of mind is you've secured the property, so the ball's in your court as a buyer and you can decide whether you proceed with the sale or not and not be put under any extra pressure or stress to complete any sooner than the amount specified in the cooling off period being 5 or 10 days. They're the positives and negatives about exchanging with the cooling off period. Exchanging with a 66W certificate, sometimes you'll hear an agent say the vendor requires an unconditional exchange. Now a 66W certificate effectively cancels the cooling off period, so it pulls away your right of a cooling off period. In saying that, the myth behind a 66W is some people believe that when somebody's asked for a 66W, it's instantly presented and you don't have time to do your building and pest or your valuation, etc. You can still go about doing that. The 66W is supplied at your discretion, so your solicitor will need to sign that 66W saying that he's explained your rights, he's explained there's no cooling off period, then it's faxed over to the agent and prepared for exchange without a cooling off period. But that doesn't happen until your solicitor's signed off, so you still have time to go out and do your inspections or whatever you need to do with the property during that time to make sure it's the correct purchase for you. Now, the negatives of this is at any time a purchaser can come in and pay the deposit and you miss out. So you could have paid for a building and pest inspection, valuation or strata report, and at the end of it all you haven't secured the property. So even if you've paid a deposit and the agent's holding a deposit in their trust account, if there's no exchange between vendor and purchaser, the property remains on the market. The vendor is within their rights to sell the property to any other purchaser until such time as the deposit's paid. And that's the positives and negatives of the 66W exchange. The other way is buying at auction. So auction conditions are pretty much, you get there on auction day, you win the bid, you're the highest successful purchaser, you'll need to sign a contract immediately and present them with a 10% check or 5%, whatever specified in the contract or agreed between solicitors before the auction. So if you're buying at auction, there's no cooling off period, no 66W required, it's a complete exchange. I'm Amar Abid, hope that helps. Cheers.